Happy Wednesday, friends. I'm Michael Kovnat, and this is the Next Big Idea Daily, quick masterclasses from the best new books written and read by the authors themselves. Don't forget to hit follow in your podcast app and sign up for our free newsletter using the link in the episode notes. So here's a brain teaser for you. Why haven't we solved the brain? With all our fancy scans, gene maps, and AI models, we still don't fully understand what's happening during a depressive episode, for example, or why your brain decides 3 a.m. is the perfect time to rehash that awkward email. But neuroscientist Nicole Rust says a major breakthrough is coming, not in medicine, but in how we think about thinking. Her new book is called Elusive Cures: Why Neuroscience Hasn't Solved Brain Disorders and How We Can Change That. Here she is to share her big ideas.
Hello, my name is Nicole Rust. I'm a brain researcher and professor at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm also the author of Elusive Cures: Why Neuroscience Hasn't Solved Brain Disorders and How We Can Change That. I'm excited to share with you 5 key insights from the book. Many of the therapies we have today to treat brain and mental disorders are derived from therapies discovered long ago, before we knew much about the brain at all, and we still don't know how most of them work. The first antidepressant is a great example. Its role in helping with mood was discovered during clinical trials for a drug to treat the lung-infecting bacteria tuberculosis. The patients who received the drug were joyous and dancing around, and the researchers realized it had a different purpose. Today, there are many antidepressant drugs, but we don't really know how they work when they do. By that, I mean we understand some things about them, like how they impact the chemicals that our brain cells use to communicate, neurotransmitters. But how does changing those chemicals change mood? And why do antidepressants take weeks to kick in? Those are things we still don't understand. Another drug that was created before we knew much about the brain is the opioid painkiller OxyContin, which was derived from the ancient remedy opium, used by the Mesopotamians as early as 3400 BCE. Yet another example is the drug Ritalin, used to treat attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. That one was created by a chemist in the 1940s who decided to try it on himself and his wife, who liked it because it made her a better tennis player. In honor of his wife, whose name was Rita, he called it Ritalin. There's so many examples of brain drugs like this. The brain is much more like the weather than a chain of cause and effect, and knowing that is crucial for treating brain and mental disorders. In the 1990s, researchers began to think about the brain as a big chain of causes that lead to effects, where brain disorders followed from broken links in the chain. That chain started with our genes that created brain cells that led to other things, like brain activity, and it ended up with the things our brains do, like seeing, remembering, thinking, and moving. The idea was that a broken link in a chain could lead to a brain disorder, and the goal was to identify those broken links so we could target them for a fix. In the case of a mutated gene, it might be a drug. In the case of a brain area with abnormal activity, the therapy might be a form of brain stimulation. The broken link idea did in fact work for some disorders. The problem is that for many other disorders, it did not. For instance, the hope of the 1990s was that we could develop blood tests and brain scans to diagnose psychiatric conditions. But we still don't have those, despite decades of trying. We still don't understand what's happening in the brain when someone goes through a depressive episode or a bout of psychosis. And we are now beginning to realize why. What's missing from the links in a chain description is that the brain is chock full of feedback loops. And that means that causes don't just lead to effects, they also feed back again as causes. This makes the brain a lot more like the weather than a chain. And a brain disorder, such as a seizure, is something like a hurricane. We should expect that, like the weather, the brain will be difficult to influence in the way we want to. We cannot, after all, dissipate a hurricane. The challenge we are up against is formidable, but by facing it head-on, I'm optimistic we will solve it. The ability to adapt to change is our brain's superpower, but it also makes it fragile in ways that lead to brain and mental disorders. Our brains are terrific at adapting. Put you in a new country with a new language, and you'll learn it. That's slow adaptation. Or see a tiger, and your brain kicks into a different mode that helps you run. That's fast adaptation. One principle of adaptive systems is that adaptability often comes at the price of fragility. It happens because these systems have a lot of dependencies. In an ecosystem, a big food web can collapse if something happens to one species, because all the species are interdependent and adapt to one another. In the case of our fight-or-flight system, which helps us run from tigers, it can burn out through overuse through chronic stress, leading to things like perturbations in our day-night rhythms and insomnia, which is a problem because sleep is so important for health. The fact that chronic stress leads to insomnia leads to other health problems is an example of dependency in a complex system where adaptation makes it fragile. There are a lot of examples like these. Our immune systems exist to adapt to foreign substances in our body to protect us from disease. When the immune system gets uncalibrated, it can lead to a neuroimmune disorder that attacks our body, like multiple sclerosis. Once you start thinking about the brain this way, fragility at the price of adaptability, you can see that it applies to nearly every brain and mental disorder. When new therapies for brain disorders are created, the story behind them is typically epic. A great example is the drug suvorexant, approved in 2024 to treat insomnia. It all began with the discovery of a new chemical brain cells use to communicate called orexin, and its role in sleep. At the time of its discovery, researchers knew that there were chemicals in our brains that help trigger sleep, like melatonin. They discovered that orexin works in the opposite way. It keeps us awake. The discovery began by studying a genetically inherited form of narcolepsy in dogs. Like humans with narcolepsy, the dogs would spontaneously fall asleep during the day. The researchers worked out that in the dogs, the genetic mutation was a problem with orexin. They then worked out that in humans with narcolepsy, it's also a problem with orexin, even though it's not genetic. Instead, the brain cells that produce orexin are degenerated, probably due to a neuroimmune attack. Working all that out took decades of research. Next, knowing that orexin in the brain keeps us awake, the pharmaceutical industry spent a decade developing an insomnia drug to block receptors for orexin. This included a screen of over 2 million chemicals to find a good one. They then modified it chemically to make it even better. Finally, the drug went through multiple stages of clinical trials to ensure it was effective and safe. Only then was suvorexant approved. As you can see, the development of the drug suvorexant was epic, for sure. We can be optimistic that the next steps in brain research will be impactful for individuals suffering from brain and mental disorders. I was motivated to write Elusive Cures because I couldn't see the through line between what was happening in brain research and the end goal of treating brain disorders, despite the fact that I've been a brain researcher for decades. I also couldn't find descriptions of that through line written down anywhere in a way that left me hopeful. So I decided to figure it out for myself, focusing on the question, what's it going to take to understand the brain in the way that we need to treat brain disorders? It was clear from the outset that something needed to change in terms of how brain researchers, including myself, were going about things. The question was, what? While writing the book, I realized that the changes that need to happen are already happening. That's the source of my optimism. In broad strokes, we've been oversimplifying the brain as something like a chain of causes that lead to effects, assuming that the causes of brain disorders are broken links in the chain. For many disorders, from Alzheimer's to depression, that hasn't been working. We've known all along that the brain is chock full of feedback loops, but it's only due to recent breakthroughs that we are able to measure and model the brain that way. In a brain with those loops, the causes of brain disorders can manifest in ways that are different from broken links. There's good reason to think that those loops are key to what we've been missing. We know that shifts like these can be the key to unlocking progress. Take the example of planetary motion. In ancient Greece, Ptolemy proposed a model in which the planets and sun revolve around the Earth. While accurate at predicting where the planets would be in the future, it had numerous hacks to account for things like the planets traversing across the sky in one direction and then changing their course. In the mid-1500s, Copernicus came along, wondering if there could perhaps be a more reasonable arrangement, and he proposed a different idea that the planets, including the Earth, travel around the sun. That shift in thinking about what planetary motion might be like was the key to kicking off progress. It inspired Kepler to create a new model, which in turn helped inspire Newton to propose gravity as the force that makes the planets move. Today, we still use Newton's physics to explain gravity for most purposes. I believe that the shift away from thinking about the brain as a chain of links to thinking about it as a system full of feedback loops, we'll be Copernican, kicking off progress that will be meaningful for reaching the end goal of treatments and cures. We cannot promise because we will only know when we know, but I believe we are entering a new era.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, everyone, you can get a copy of Elusive Cures using the link in the episode notes. That's our show for the day. If you got something out of it, please leave a rating or review in your podcast player so others can find it too. And go to nextbigideaclub.com to find out about our hardback subscription club. That's where we send you the best new nonfiction books as chosen by our curators, Malcolm Gladwell, Adam Grant, Susan Cain, and Daniel Pink. Check it out at nextbigideaclub.com. I'm Michael Kovnat. See you tomorrow.